Welcome to Season 5 of Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I'm your host, Randi Roberts, Executive and Career Life Coach. This season, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood capabilities in leadership, courage. Not the dramatic kind, but the everyday courage to step into discomfort, speak up when it matters, make hard calls, and lead forward even when the path isn't clear. You'll hear from executives and coaches sharing real moments that tested them and shaped their careers. My hope is that each conversation invites you to reflect on your own relationship with courage, where it's serving you, and where a braver step may be just ahead. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. In our series this season about courage, leadership courage, courage in our lives, as soon as I was planning it, I knew that I had to invite my friend and my colleague, Laurice Duffy, to be here for a conversation about this. Laurice focuses her coaching business. She works with women in terms of empowerment. I mean, a women's empowerment coach, I love even saying that. It feels strong. It feels forward looking. It feels all the things. And this is what Laurice focuses her business on. So she's done a lot of work in that area. She's worked with a lot of people. She has her own journey. There are all so many examples of ways that courage shows up in her life and in her work that I'm really excited to jump into the conversation. Laurice, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Randi. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So to dive in, thinking about courage, and I know it is an issue that you discuss a lot with clients, how does it show up? What do they present with that makes you feel like that's what's at the heart of this issue?
Yeah, fear is definitely something that comes up a lot in my client sessions. And I think that it's usually the fear of doing something uncomfortable, the fear of change. There's always, fear is always sort of at the forefront of what the block is, and sort of interfering with them trying to get to where they want to go to, and really kind of peeling that back and understanding it. I truly believe that our subconscious, they say like 95% of what we believe is in our subconscious. And our subconscious guides our behavior. And we can't figure out why we do the things that we do or why we can't change certain habits. And it's because our behaviors and our patterns and our habits are being guided by something that we're not even aware of. So once we can bring that to light and they can have the awareness around what's at the root, all of a sudden the fear is secondary. And there's sort of an understanding about, where the real work is. And we can sort of dissolve a little bit of the fear and help them to move forward and create the life that, they're really excited about starting.
There's so much in what you said. And the fear of change and the fear of getting uncomfortable and the core is to become aware of what the thing is. But it's interesting because it does feel like layers almost, where the first thing they may be afraid of is being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
You got to get through that layer to get to the other layer.
Absolutely. Discomfort, a lot of discomfort is where we grow. That is the when we're in the feeling of the energy of discomfort, that's when we're stretching ourselves, when we're evolving a little bit. But nobody wants to do it. Nobody's excited about being uncomfortable, right? And I think that trying to understand what's on the other side. I always feel like it's the anticipation of doing the uncomfortable thing that's the most difficult. The the most challenging, not actually doing the uncomfortable thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I think too, when we can sort of identify that and come up with like a little toolbox of ways to just help you through that anxiety. And what I, absolutely encourage my clients to do, which is something I did in my own life. And, as you know, Randy, and I'll share with your listeners that my husband passed away. I had an 8th grader and three 11th graders, triplet boys in 11th grade. When he passed, it was a 3-year illness. And I had a lot of my own fear. And I asked friends and family to invite me to do things that I was not comfortable doing. And this is what went on. And I did a variety of different things. Well, one day, I went to Portugal. One of the things was a friend invited, I don't know, maybe like 20 people to Portugal. We all stayed in this great big house. I only knew a couple of people. My husband had only been, had only passed at that point, maybe a year and a half. And I did it, right? I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. I wasn't sure being around a lot of people I didn't know, being in a different country, being away from my kid. There were so many things that felt a little scary and unfamiliar. And when I got home from that trip, I sat down and I truly sat with the feeling that I had in that moment of how proud I was that I did the uncomfortable thing, that I did the unfamiliar, that I did the scary thing. And I soaked in how I felt after I was home in my safe place, my familiar place, right? I soaked it in. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to pull from that every time that little voice creeped in when I was in front of a new challenge, a new discomfort, a new unfamiliar. I soaked it in so that little voice never got louder or never was able to get louder than that feeling, because I really felt it and I let it be loud. And every time I had to do something new or uncomfortable, I went back to that feeling, and it always won. It always won. And that was just my own personal experience with fear and overcoming.
That's amazing. And I so appreciate you sharing all of that. And I didn't know this whole backstory. I remember you going on that trip, but I didn't know the whole backstory. And it's so interesting because you took that on knowing that this was a big fear of yours. You sought it out. Asking family and friends to take you somewhere you knew you were physically safe. You were around people that weren't going to let bad things happen to you. But it was the emotional, the inside. And what occurs to me is, and I don't know if this is right or if you were aware of it at the time, but the benefit of doing the scary thing was going to outweigh the fear for you and
Absolutely.
enabled you to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not only that, but it was also something for me to refer back to. It was evidence, number one, that I can do the scary thing. And it was evidence that, or a reminder that that feeling after you do the scary thing is so amazing and so much bigger than the anxiety of having to do it before you do it, that it's not that you're never uncomfortable again, because of course you are, but you know what's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that knowing, that feeling, you want that feeling, right? So it's just all part of the equation to really create a life that you really want and that you're building instead of feeling limited from. It's that.
Yeah, it's such a great example of taking bold steps in a situation where none of us want to be in that situation. You had kids at home, your husband passed, that phase of life, um, and you didn't, the time that most people would feel a lack of courage, you found courage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Randy, I'm going to tell you something that you probably know because we both went to IPAC, which is a wonderful, wonderful coaching school. And there was a principle that we learned that said, each moment describes who you are and gives you the opportunity to decide if that's who you want to be. And when I'm faced with a uncomfortable situation, something that is offered to me or I can do that's really going to stretch me, that's going to create growth, I think about that. I think about that. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody that travels and does scary things and is willing to be willing? Who do I want to be? Honestly, even when my husband was sick and dying, he had ALS, so we knew he was terminal. I asked myself at the end, almost every day, who do you want to be today? Who do you want to be today? And it wasn't because if I wanted to be somebody who was sad or frustrated or angry at how this was all playing out very differently than how I thought it was going to go. That would be okay. There was no judgment. But I wanted to make sure that I was intentionally choosing who I was. I was not going to be guided by some, deep down feelings of grief and all of that. I wanted to choose. And,
Yeah.
I rarely chose anger, or I really, I knew who I was when things were easy, right? I was a great aunt, mother, wife, sister, neighbor, friend. Who was I going to be now that life was at rock bottom? I got to choose. And so that principle, I think, is really, really important and
Yeah.
transformational, so to speak.
It's so beautiful. I'm so glad you brought it up. I have a similar conversation with clients a lot when we're talking about who they aspire to be as a leader and really projecting ahead 12 months, 2 years, whatever the time frame is. What do you, who do you want to be? How do you want to be perceived? How do you want to feel? And what does you today need to do to set up that future? So I have that conversation a lot. But you're making that choice every day, which, we can make that as micro or macro as serves us. I love that.
Well, and choosing that was, who do I want to be? But it was also, you know, who do who does my who do I need to be, for my husband, who's dying? Who do I need to be for my children who are counting on me and who are watching their father, his illness? But also, Randy, who do I want to be for my future self? What does she need? Which kind of
Right.
goes back to your, how you say think about the end, right? So I really thought about her too. What does she need from me right now? And I knew she needed peace and she needed no regret. And that knowing that she needed that helped me to intentionally provide it for her. The me now, who's so grateful, right? Because I did things with patience and with kindness and with compassion, even, when when it was hard, because I knew that I got one chance at this and that my future self needed me. My kids were going to follow my lead, right? My husband needed. So it was just, again, part of that coaching, right? Or that principle rather, who do you want to be, but also thinking not only about that for yourself, but also your future self, right? You go and do the scary thing. How does your future self feel about that? What does she need you to know? Thinking about her.
It's It's so important. And I can see, like, with many of us coaches, we coach what we know, we coach what we've experienced. And I can see how your experience and the mining of it serves your clients. So, thinking about work you do with clients, like, if they're feeling that they need to want to make some bold move, but feel stuck, how do you help them to find that courage to move?
Yeah. Um, so I think that understanding that there is another version of you that is absolutely capable of this, right? So it's creating a belief, because I think oftentimes there's these limiting beliefs that we carry that we can't do that. We're not good enough for that, right? You can't outperform your self image. So it's like when we can get underneath those limiting beliefs and really kind of bring them to our awareness and understand where they, where they were created, what experiences sort of caused them. Usually they're from childhood. And we can, well, what's some evidence that goes against that belief, right? Share with me. And we kind of go through this whole process. And once there's an understanding of that's not true, this is just something that I've carried, a belief, again, probably in your subconscious that, and is guiding your behavior, and you're believing things as a result of it, as a result of this lie, that are causing limitations. And I always say to my clients, you cannot break free from a prison you don't know you're in. And I think that that's really important to remind them, because those limitations are something that we create within ourselves, and the limiting beliefs are certainly a big part of it. So the short answer is we get really clear on those limiting beliefs, and we find evidence to support otherwise. That immediately eases. Now, I'm not saying then they're running to do the thing, but it really takes away some of the power that fear, holds. And once we get there, then we can sort of allow the feeling of fear, of some discomfort. Maybe we even change the name, because it's kind of like a little bit of excitement too, right? Maybe it's, Glennon Doyle calls it skited, scared and excited, kind of, and I love that, because I think that words can be limiting. So when we think, okay, you know what, this isn't all fear. It's a little kind of it has like some butterflies in my stomach, and it, whatever, it's kind of causing, so it's not, all scary. It's some of it's a little excitement. Okay, good. And then we just think about how it's going to feel after, and what it's going to create within us. And I think that getting excited about the result is a big part of, like, kind of visualizing what that looks like and how you'll feel after you do it. So I think when we put all those things together, they make for a really beautiful path, towards the thing they want, with, again, some fear. There's no such thing as fearless. So, when people think, well, oh, other people can do it, but I can't, I no, they did it. They just did it scared. I still do things scared. I've done so many things. Most of them are done scared. That's great. Good. It's awesome. So yes. Don't be thinking that the other people are just, flying through it with ease. No, everybody's frightened a little bit. That's when you know you're alive. That's when you know you're moving towards something great.
Yeah. That's why, what you said about that anxiety could be excitement, and you use that. It's a signal that something's important to you. that it means something. Something that you said I think is really powerful because I think obviously, think deeply about coaching and how my work that I do with executives and leaders intersects and differs from the more powerful life coaching type work that you do. And I think there's so much overlap. There's way more than people anticipate. I think more than I anticipated when I went into this. And one of the things is like people that will come to me, a lot of times they're very structured thinkers. They may have gone to business school. They may be, a lot of my network is in pharma, so maybe science based, that kind of thing. And they're used to finding evidence for their opinions, for their assumptions, for their forecasting, whatever that is. And the way you're describing it is not that much different. It's the kind of thing that affects all of us, being afraid, not tapping into our courage. And one of the ways you can deal with that is to find the evidence. Find the evidence that you in your past that you've done it and that how did you do it and move forward in that way. And the way you took on that trip to Portugal to build that evidence base that you can then draw on is so powerful if we're talking life coaching or leadership coaching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be applied to all. It really comes down to the basics. It really does. And it's important. And it's a transformational, part of moving forward and moving towards all the things that you want. There is a on that note, there's a someone, I don't know who, so I apologize, I can't give them credit, but explained the definition of hell, and it's when you arrive at heaven and you meet the person you could have become.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I think that fear and really, taking that plunge and being willing really takes you to becoming that person,
Yeah.
right? And guess what? My feeling is the win is being willing, not whatever the result is. Like, let's say you decide, oh my God, this scares me to death, but I want to do a marathon, whatever, New York City Marathon, and you're the last one, or you can't finish or whatever. That's success. You already succeeded because you were willing to do the uncomfortable. The results, yeah, we can make them better as we go along, whatever, but the win already happened.
Yeah. So much here. Laurice, I have one more question for you because we've talked in the beginning about, how courage or the lack of courage or not being able to find our courage shows up in your own process and how you address this with clients. What internal shifts do you see when a person has, like you have, sort of developed that muscle?
Yeah, I like that term, develop that muscle, because that's exactly what it is. It's funny. I just had a client this afternoon who now recognizes her own limiting beliefs and her own narrative that she's been telling herself and has believed, and has really, embraced the idea that it's not true. And it's like you can hear it in her voice. You can hear the energy is different. And it's interesting, Randi, because some challenges that she was happening with a career that she's taking, well, things in the past week or two have just been opening up. And so it's like recognizing that the shift, people believe when my external world, when the things that are happening outside of me improve, I will feel better. And what I tell all of my clients, including her, who talked about this today, everybody has it backwards. We need to create a beautiful internal home. Beliefs that we have about ourselves and what we're capable of. And when we can create that truly, and we do that by identifying the limiting beliefs, and creating evidence to show otherwise. And so now we have the awareness, and now we repeat the practice. It becomes part of who we are. We feel worthy. We feel like we're enough. And now our external world transforms, but not before the inner work is done. It doesn't happen the other way around.
Yeah.
And when clients get that and then they start seeing it, oh my gosh. I mean, you can just see the difference in their face. You can see you can hear the difference in their voice, the energy that they bring. It's different. They're different. And it's beautiful. I mean, it is probably one of the most fulfilling things that occurs, as a result of being in this business, and gives me, I just feel so honored to be part of it. I really do. I really do.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. And I think it's another thing that ties through the work that you do and the work that I do, because when people will first come to see me, we may be talking about a career transition or the feeling that something isn't fitting anymore and they want to figure out how to get unstuck with it. And a lot of times what we start talking about is their values and things like the things that are important to them in the world, that you can't, until you do that foundational work, you can't get to the thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah.
Laurice, you've given me so much to think about, and I know our listeners will get a lot out of it too. If people want to follow you, how can they find you? How can they be in touch with you?
Yeah. So I have a website, mindfuljourneyld.com.
A mindful journey LD, like Laurice Duffy.com.
Yep.
Okay.
.com.
I'll put that in the show notes so that.
Okay, that would be perfect. And my Instagram is amindfuljourney.ld. And you can find in either of those places. I wrote a book called Raising Hope. And that is another way to sort of get to know who I am and the tools that I give. And, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And, even on my Instagram, I post inspiration and, write about things that are helpful, particularly for women and that feel empowering and help them kind of start to get out of their own way on their own, and really think about things maybe a little bit differently, right? Maybe changing that lens just a little bit, because perspective is huge. And when we can shift that a little bit, we're on our way. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you've shared with us today. It's been, everything I thought it would be in this conversation. So I really appreciate you giving me and my listeners your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.